The wedding was nothing short of spectacular, a dazzling display of wealth, power, and influence that left society talking for weeks. The billionaire husband, a man known for his business acumen and high-profile lifestyle, married a strikingly beautiful black woman whose elegance and poise drew admiration from everyone who encountered her. Their arrival at social galas, charity events, and corporate functions was always met with applause, paparazzi flashes, and whispers of envy. To the outside world, it seemed like a fairy tale, a perfect couple living in luxury, commanding attention wherever they went, and embodying the epitome of success and sophistication. Yet behind the opulent facade, the marriage was hollow. The husband's priorities lay firmly in his sprawling empire. Board meetings, international negotiations, and business conquests consumed him entirely, leaving little room for emotional connection or intimacy with his wife. The woman, despite her accomplishments and grace, often felt like a spectator in her own life, admired publicly but invisible in private. Each lavish dinner, each extravagant gift, and each public gesture masked the growing chasm between them. Beneath the glittering veneer, a subtle tension simmered, a longing for love, respect, and acknowledgement that remained unmet. This was a marriage in which appearances dazzled, but the heart quietly ached, setting the stage for a journey that would test resilience, reveal hidden strengths, and ultimately reshape their understanding of love. The first months of the marriage were marked by a strange mix of excitement and emptiness. Initially, the bride had hoped that the honeymoon period would allow them to forge a genuine connection, to feel the warmth and intimacy that should accompany such a commitment. She tried to engage her husband in meaningful conversation, sharing her dreams, ideas, and even her fears, hoping to break through the walls of his preoccupation with business. Yet, time and again, her efforts were met with distant nods, distracted glances at his phone, or polite but hollow reassurances. During lavish social events, she would sit beside him on the red carpet or at exclusive galas, radiant and poised, while he smiled perfunctorily, his attention often drifting to corporate leaders or potential investors across the room. The public perceived them as the perfect couple, glamorous and admired, but behind the flashes of cameras, she felt invisible, like a silent spectator in a life that should have been shared intimately. Private moments offered little reprieve. In their sprawling penthouse, she attempted to initiate heartfelt discussions over late dinners or quiet evenings by the fireplace, but he seemed to carry the weight of work into every corner of their home. His responses were curt, distracted, or delayed, leaving her to grapple with an overwhelming sense of loneliness amid abundance. Even gestures meant to bridge the gap, a bouquet of flowers or a planned weekend getaway, felt superficial because they were quickly overshadowed by his preoccupation with deals, meetings, and travel. As weeks turned into months, the isolation deepened. She noticed subtle signs of neglect, postponed conversations, forgotten promises, and a growing emotional distance that no amount of luxury could fill. Friends remarked on the discrepancy between the public image and the private reality, but their comments felt distant, almost irrelevant, against the backdrop of her day-to-day experiences. Each attempt to spark a genuine connection met a wall of indifference, and the vibrant hope she carried into the marriage slowly gave way to quiet disappointment. In the midst of wealth, status, and admiration, she discovered a stark truth. The marriage was thriving in society's eyes but starving in the heart, leaving her yearning for something she could not yet define but knew she deserved. The emotional neglect she experienced was a quiet but relentless force, eroding her sense of self in ways no one could immediately see. Living with a partner who was physically present but emotionally absent created a vacuum, one that made her question her worth and the validity of the love she thought they shared. She had entered the marriage full of hope, carrying dreams of partnership, understanding, and intimacy, only to find herself navigating an environment where her feelings were overlooked and her efforts to connect were routinely dismissed. This silence was deafening, each ignored comment or distracted glance amplifying the loneliness she felt even within the luxury that surrounded her. Societal expectations added another layer of pressure. As a black woman married into wealth, she was constantly scrutinized, expected to be gracious, beautiful, and accommodating while suppressing any expression of dissatisfaction. The contradiction between society's admiration of her life and her private suffering weighed heavily, forcing her to compartmentalize her emotions to maintain appearances. Internally, she wrestled with the question of whether love required patience, compromise, or simply acceptance of neglect as an inevitable part of marrying someone so powerful. Her coping mechanisms were varied. She confided in trusted friends, seeking validation and advice, while journaling became a sanctuary where she could confront her feelings honestly. Occasionally, she sought counsel from a therapist, attempting to untangle the complex web of affection, disappointment, and expectation that defined her daily life. Yet, even as she worked to navigate her emotions, the silence from her husband was a persistent reminder that emotional absence could wound as deeply as overt betrayal. Each day, she learned to balance hope with reality, discovering resilience and self-awareness even as she longed for the acknowledgement and intimacy that remained just out of reach. Being part of an interracial marriage in elite social circles came with scrutiny that was both overt and insidious. From the moment their union was announced, society's gaze was unrelenting. Commentaries in tabloids, whispers at high society events, and even casual remarks from acquaintances highlighted the marriage as an unusual pairing, sometimes praising it but often questioning its authenticity or long-term viability. People speculated whether love was genuine or if the marriage was a strategic alliance, subtly undermining their legitimacy as a couple. While the husband's wealth shielded them from some criticism, it also amplified expectations. Every action, every public appearance, was analyzed and compared to societal ideals of what a perfect wealthy couple should look like. For her, these pressures created an internal conflict. She felt immense pride in her identity, her heritage, and the accomplishments that defined her before and outside of marriage. Yet, there was a persistent, almost invisible pressure to conform to elite norms, dress codes, behavior, and even ways of speaking that aligned with high society expectations. Balancing authenticity with acceptance became a daily negotiation. Public admiration of her elegance and poise often felt hollow because it rarely reflected understanding or respect for her individuality. Media scrutiny compounded the tension. Paparazzi and social platforms dissected her every appearance, sometimes praising her beauty but implicitly questioning her role and influence in the marriage. Every smile at a gala or charity event was interpreted as proof of harmony, while private struggles were invisible to the outside world. The constant dichotomy between public admiration and private isolation forced her to navigate societal pressures while protecting her sense of self, a challenge that weighed heavily even as she maintained composure and grace. Beneath the billionaire's composed exterior lay a labyrinth of insecurities and unresolved conflicts that few could perceive. From childhood, he had been conditioned to equate success with power, wealth, and control, internalizing the belief that emotions were a vulnerability rather than a strength. Past betrayals and disappointments in personal relationships had hardened him, leaving him cautious, guarded, and emotionally distant. These experiences, combined with the immense pressures of managing a sprawling business empire, created invisible barriers that kept him from fully engaging with his wife. Love, in his mind, had to compete with deadlines, meetings, and the unrelenting pursuit of status. His obsession with business achievements was not merely ambition, it was a defense mechanism. By immersing himself in work, he could avoid confronting the vulnerability of intimacy, the fear of failure in a personal relationship, and the discomfort of emotional exposure. Ego and pride compounded the issue, admitting that he had neglected his wife would require humility and accountability, traits he had seldom exercised outside the boardroom. Yet, subtle cracks appeared in his armor. Quiet moments of reflection revealed fleeting awareness that his marriage was suffering, that the woman beside him deserved more than polite attention and formal gestures. He noticed her subtle expressions of loneliness, the way her eyes sometimes betrayed disappointment despite her composed demeanor. In rare, unguarded moments, he questioned whether his pursuit of success had come at too high a cost. These seeds of doubt, though small, hinted at the possibility of transformation, setting the stage for a journey in which he would confront his fears, re-examine priorities, and ultimately learn that love requires presence, vulnerability, and genuine connection. Among the glittering circles of high society, there were always observers, friends, family members, and advisors, who noticed the subtle cracks in the seemingly perfect marriage. Some friends, close enough to see behind the facade, expressed concern, offering advice or gentle interventions. They invited the wife to social gatherings with the intention of lifting her spirits or subtly hinting to the husband that emotional attention was needed. These allies were genuine in their care, hoping to bridge the widening emotional gap before it became irreparable. Family members, however, often reacted differently. Some remained silent, unwilling to interfere in what they considered a personal matter, or perhaps fearing the potential fallout from confronting a billionaire. Their silence, though intended as neutrality, sometimes compounded the wife's feelings of isolation, reinforcing the sense that she had to navigate her struggles alone. Then there were those who saw opportunity in the couple's struggles. Advisors and acquaintances with vested interests subtly manipulated situations for personal gain, whether to secure business advantages, influence social standing, or foster dependency. They exploited misunderstandings and tension, amplifying conflicts for their own benefit, often under the guise of concern. These varied perspectives added layers to the narrative, highlighting that the marriage was not only a private emotional battleground but also a public spectacle observed and judged from multiple angles. While some sought to mend, others watched silently, and a few acted strategically, revealing the complex interplay between loyalty, opportunism, and human empathy that surrounded the couple's lives. Tensions that had simmered beneath the surface for months finally erupted in moments of confrontation, exposing the emotional chasm between them. One evening, during a high-profile charity gala, the wife attempted to share a personal achievement, a project she had poured her heart into, with her husband. Instead of acknowledgement, he barely glanced her way, distracted by discussions with investors about an overseas merger. His dismissive response, subtle but unmistakable, stung deeply. Later, at an intimate dinner at their penthouse, she expressed her desire to spend more quality time together, suggesting a weekend getaway or even simple evenings at home. He responded with a curt, "I have meetings all weekend," leaving her feeling unvalued and invisible. Miscommunications further fueled the distance. Invitations, messages, and emotional gestures often went unnoticed or misinterpreted. A thoughtful note expressing affection was brushed aside as inconsequential, while a simple request for attention was met with irritation. Jealousy occasionally flared, though rarely openly discussed. The wife noticed his lingering attention on other socialites at events, and she could not help but feel sidelined in her own marriage. Her growing frustration manifested in quiet sighs, subtle withdrawals, and pointed remarks, which he interpreted as overreactions, deepening the misunderstanding. Public embarrassment also punctuated their relationship, highlighting the stark contrast between appearances and reality. At a corporate gathering, she corrected a minor error in his speech, only for him to wave her off, saying, "Focus on looking pretty tonight." The remark, casual to him, publicly diminished her accomplishments, leaving her humiliated amid colleagues and acquaintances. These repeated incidents accumulated, creating a tension that neither could ignore. Every argument, every overlooked moment, and every small slight built toward a breaking point. The wife's patience waned as her hope for emotional connection clashed with the reality of persistent neglect. The husband's dismissive attitude, though never overtly cruel, became a barrier that threatened to erode their bond completely. Each confrontation revealed not only the cracks in their relationship but also the urgency for change, setting the stage for the eventual catalyst that would force the billionaire to confront his neglect and reassess the value of the wife he had so long overlooked. During the 2 years of emotional distance, the wife embarked on a journey of self-realization and personal growth that reshaped her understanding of identity and worth. Initially, the neglect she faced left her questioning her value and place within the marriage, but gradually, she began to recognize that her life, accomplishments, and happiness did not depend solely on her husband's acknowledgement. She turned inward, exploring her passions and talents with renewed vigor, and discovered a resilience she had previously underestimated. Professionally, she made significant strides, leveraging her intelligence, creativity, and determination to achieve goals that earned her recognition and respect in elite circles. She led philanthropic initiatives, became a sought-after speaker at social and corporate events, and cultivated a network of influential peers who admired her competence and vision. Each achievement reinforced her sense of autonomy and proved that she could thrive independently, regardless of her husband's engagement or emotional availability. Her social influence also grew. Friends and colleagues began to see her as a figure of inspiration, someone who navigated challenges with grace and confidence. By mentoring younger women, supporting community projects, and asserting herself in social forums, she strengthened her public presence and cultivated a sense of purpose that extended beyond the confines of her marriage. Internally, she developed emotional intelligence, learning to navigate disappointment without allowing it to define her self-worth. She recognized the importance of boundaries, self-care, and maintaining a life that reflected her values and ambitions. Through introspection and action, she became less reliant on external validation, understanding that love and recognition could be fulfilling only when coupled with personal empowerment. By the end of this period, she emerged as a confident, self-assured woman, aware that her identity and value were intrinsic, independent of her husband's affection, and fully capable of commanding respect and admiration in every sphere of her life. The turning point came unexpectedly, during a high-stakes corporate gala where the husband had been set to announce a major international partnership. Everything that could go wrong did. A miscommunication with a key investor nearly derailed the deal, and the media seized upon the tense moments, portraying him as distracted, arrogant, and unprepared. Amid the chaos, he noticed, for the first time with stark clarity, that his wife was standing silently beside him, her composure flawless, her confidence unmistakable. She had quietly intervened behind the scenes, using her connections and insight to salvage the situation, ensuring that the negotiations did not collapse entirely. This revelation hit him with surprising force. All the years he had invested in work, ego, and self-importance suddenly seemed hollow compared to the depth of her capability and the emotional labor she had silently carried. He realized how oblivious he had been, not just to her contributions, but to her feelings, her struggles, and the loneliness that had defined her existence within their marriage. The luxury, the public admiration, and even the power he wielded were meaningless if he continued to neglect the one person who had always been by his side. In the quiet aftermath of the gala, away from the flashing cameras and judging eyes, he confronted his own reflection, both literal and metaphorical, and felt the weight of his failings. For the first time, he acknowledged the emotional void between them and the urgency of bridging it. This moment, charged with recognition and humility, became the catalyst that shifted the trajectory of their relationship. The stagnant patterns of neglect began to fracture, and the husband's long-suppressed capacity for emotional connection stirred, signaling the start of a transformation that neither of them could have anticipated. The billionaire husband's transformation began subtly but with unmistakable intent. For the first time, he allowed himself to confront the consequences of his emotional neglect, reflecting on the ways his ambition, ego, and distractions had hurt the woman he had vowed to love and protect. He realized that wealth and status could never compensate for the absence of genuine connection, and that without effort, the 2 years of distance could become permanent scars on their marriage. He started with introspection, acknowledging not only his failures but also the patterns of avoidance and pride that had created barriers between them. Conversations that had previously been rushed or superficial became intentional and deliberate. He asked questions about her feelings, listened without interruption, and allowed himself to feel the vulnerability that had long intimidated him. For the first time, he admitted mistakes openly, offering heartfelt apologies for dismissive words, forgotten promises, and the emotional neglect that had defined much of their union. His gestures followed the sincerity of his words. He planned thoughtful surprises, private dinners, and trips that reflected her passions and desires rather than his own. He publicly acknowledged her achievements and contributions, highlighting the depth of her intelligence, grace, and influence. These actions, consistent and meaningful, demonstrated that his commitment extended beyond material wealth or appearances. He was actively choosing to prioritize her, to nurture their bond, and to honor the love that had long been dormant. Slowly, the wife began to see his transformation not as a fleeting attempt to appease her but as a genuine effort to rebuild trust and intimacy. The emotional walls that had separated them started to crumble, replaced by vulnerability, understanding, and mutual respect. This period illustrated a powerful truth. Love, even when delayed, can flourish when coupled with intention, humility, and consistent, heartfelt effort. Their journey showed that reconciliation is possible when one partner is willing to confront past mistakes and fully invest in emotional connection, proving that true affection can thrive even after years of neglect. The husband's efforts to reclaim his wife unfolded in both subtle and unmistakable ways, blending public acknowledgement with private devotion. In social circles where their marriage had once been scrutinized and misjudged, he began to make visible gestures that demonstrated not just affection, but recognition of her importance in his life. At gala events and business functions, he introduced her proudly, emphasizing her accomplishments, intelligence, and influence rather than merely presenting her as an accessory to his status. He spoke openly about her contributions to their shared life, publicly expressing gratitude for her insight and emotional support, which had quietly guided him through complex decisions. These declarations were more than performative, they reflected a sincere shift in his perception and priorities. Privately, he worked diligently to rebuild trust and intimacy. He initiated meaningful conversations about feelings, dreams, and past misunderstandings, listening actively and responding with empathy. Romantic gestures, once rare and perfunctory, became thoughtful and consistent. Handwritten notes, spontaneous dinners, and weekend getaways that focused on shared experiences rather than opulent displays. Each gesture carried the weight of acknowledgement, demonstrating that he valued her presence beyond superficial appearances. Trust building became central to their reconciliation. He honored promises, ensured her voice was heard in decisions, and actively participated in moments that mattered to her. Emotional vulnerability replaced his former distance, allowing both to explore feelings previously suppressed by fear, pride, or neglect. Intimacy followed naturally, a reflection of renewed connection rather than obligation, bringing warmth and closeness that had been absent for years. Through these combined efforts, the husband symbolically and practically claimed his wife, not as a possession, but as a partner, equal and cherished. The public displays reinforced their unity, while private devotion cemented the emotional bond. Together, these actions transformed the marriage from a hollow, distant arrangement into a relationship grounded in respect, love, and mutual acknowledgement, signaling the fulfillment of both the wife's and husband's long-neglected needs. The couple's renewed closeness did not go unnoticed. Friends and acquaintances, who had once whispered about the cold distance between them, now remarked on the transformation with admiration. Social media and elite circles buzzed with praise for the wife's grace and the husband's evident effort to rebuild their bond. Friends who had offered support during difficult times felt vindicated, witnessing firsthand the positive outcome of patience, resilience, and intentional action. Family members, initially skeptical or silent observers, responded with a mix of relief and cautious optimism. Parents and siblings who had worried about the emotional toll of neglect were heartened to see genuine care and affection flourish. Even those who had doubted the longevity of the marriage were compelled to acknowledge the sincerity of the husband's change and the wife's unwavering strength. Yet, admiration was accompanied by subtle envy. Onlookers who had once envied the couple's wealth and status now found themselves quietly comparing their own relationships, wondering how such a dramatic transformation had been achieved. Public commentary shifted from speculation about discord to recognition of growth, commitment, and emotional investment. The contrast between past perceptions of a hollow, distant marriage and the present reality of intimacy, mutual respect, and shared joy highlighted the couple's journey, making their reconciliation not only a personal triumph but also a social statement about the power of perseverance, understanding, and love realized through effort. After 2 years of emotional distance, reflection became a cornerstone of their renewed relationship. The wife recognized that patience and self-respect were essential in navigating a marriage complicated by neglect and ambition. She had learned that her identity was not contingent upon her husband's attention or approval. Instead, it was rooted in her accomplishments, values, and inner strength. The challenges she endured cultivated resilience, emotional intelligence, and clarity about the kind of love she deserved. Through these reflections, she appreciated the significance of mutual respect, understanding, and open communication as the foundation for a lasting partnership. The husband, in turn, confronted the consequences of his previous indifference. He realized that love required intentionality, presence, and vulnerability. His reflections revealed the cost of prioritizing ambition over intimacy and the importance of acknowledging his partner's value, both publicly and privately. He recognized that true fulfillment came not from wealth or status alone, but from nurturing emotional bonds that had been neglected for too long. Together, they acknowledged that their 2-year struggle, while painful, had strengthened their connection. The period of neglect had illuminated the importance of patience, perseverance, and personal growth in love. They emerged with a deeper understanding of each other, a renewed commitment to emotional honesty, and a profound appreciation for the journey that had transformed their marriage. Their experiences underscored a universal truth. Love, when coupled with effort, reflection, and respect, can endure trials and ultimately flourish into something stronger, more authentic, and emotionally fulfilling. By the time the couple had fully navigated the turbulence of their first 2 years together, their relationship had been transformed in ways neither could have anticipated. The hollow distance that had once defined their marriage had been replaced with warmth, intimacy, and a profound understanding of each other's hearts. What had begun as neglect and misunderstanding evolved into a partnership grounded in mutual respect, genuine affection, and shared purpose. The journey had tested their patience, resilience, and capacity for forgiveness, but it had also revealed the enduring power of love when coupled with effort and sincerity. Publicly, they became a symbol of reconciliation and growth, admired not just for their wealth or elegance, but for the authenticity of their renewed bond. Privately, they savored quiet moments of connection, late-night conversations, shared laughter, and mutual support that reinforced their emotional closeness. Every gesture, word, and act of care became a testament to the deliberate choice to nurture their love. The wife, once burdened by isolation and invisibility, now felt seen, valued, and cherished. The husband, having confronted his flaws and vulnerabilities, experienced the profound satisfaction that comes from genuine partnership. Together, they discovered that love delayed need not be love lost, and that even after years of neglect, heartfelt effort can create deep, lasting happiness. Their story concluded not with perfection, but with a profound realization that true love is resilient, transformative, and capable of flourishing even in the aftermath of struggle.